Hey now, welcome to the dirty side of the track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob on something that looks like a potato with a string. We'll see how the quality works this week. It was an amazing weekend in Miami. Everything I ever said bad about Miami, I take back. How are you, Rob?
I mean, I'm good. I'd love to say that in a huge bit of celebration, I knocked my laptop on the floor and broke it, hence why I'm joining on the phone tonight. But the suspicion is being pointed at one of my kids that so far hasn't fessed up to breaking it. But how could we not record tonight after watching that? It
Oh, what a
was
day. What a
I
weekend.
mean, yeah, what a weekend! It's been absolutely brilliant. I think I enjoyed the sprint more than you. I think I enjoyed Qualy more than you. But who gives a crap? Because the race eradicated the whole. I mean, just
Yeah,
amazing,
I
amazing,
liked the
amazing,
sprint a
amazing.
lot too, and it brought me around. We'll get to it and we'll talk about it. But I got to say this: for the last hour, waiting for you to get done with whatever the heck you were doing, uh, it took that time for me to calm down and not just say, let's go straight to the race. Let's abandon the format we've
I
used, the
know,
tried and true format. Skip it all, baby, and go straight to the race. We
I
will get
know.
there, I promise. For everyone on a high right now, just hang on with us as we recap how
Will
we got to that high. We will get there.
will we? Because I was with you. I was like, screw it. Let's just go straight to Lando's
Let's if
podium.
I go if I
Let's
go
go.
for me.
Anyway, no. Okay, we have a format. Let's stick to it. Even if I'm on a phone and things could die at any minute. But
Well, we'll speed
um,
through it.
news and social, video vote. Then we will pick the bones out of fairly standard, run of the mill, boring race weekend, um, and take it from there. So let's dive straight in. Week started on an absolute downer for me, so I'm glad it started on a downer and finished on a high. It
Yeah, yeah.
started on a downer when I watched Ferrari, who
Right.
promised us blue livery, blue livery. Hey, guess what? Whatever you think, it's going to be blue.
They
Red? No way.
promoted
It's
it.
going to.
They promoted it, not like
They
we
said
did.
it,
They kept saying, "You better not miss our new blue livery. You better tune in. The Miami livery
and
is going to
then
be insane." And you know what?
and then no, no, no. But before we even get there, they did it even worse because then they parade Charles and
Carlos.
Carlos in their blue Dynaco uniforms, and we're like, oh my gosh, look at those race uniforms. They are completely blue. There's not even a trace of red. You know what that means for the car? Yeah, it's red, and someone accidentally dropped some blue paint on it. I
They're
mean,
like, what? You know, the sponsor HP has a bluish color, so why don't we make a big deal about this livery? Call it special. When in reality, all we're doing is adding a new sponsor. And what we're going to do is have two tones of blue. Hang on, Rob. We're going to have two tones of blue. And what we're going to do is cover the wheels will be blue, the halo will be blue, and we'll splash a little blue here, Z, there, Z on the mirrors and things, and then the logo. It was so
no, no.
disappointing.
Well, even worse than that, I'm with you all the way up until the last little detail, which is which blue should we use? Should we use the blue from HP, or should we make HP's blue fit the kind of Azuri blue or whatever it is we want to use? No, no, no. Let's do a different blue so the blue actually clashes with the HP logo and makes it look even worse. Yeah, that's a plan. Let's do it.
So when I
Oh,
saw the car, like there's sometimes in life sound effects play, and this was what I heard. Could have been so great, and for a Ferrari team, a marketing team, a branding team that pretty much never misses. Not only did they missed by a mile. However, when we're speaking of liveries, I didn't know RB, Visa Cash App, whatever the heck they're being called, Toro Rosso, was doing a special livery. And
no,
then they
no, mate.
dropped this thing, and it's a banger. I look at this and
Yeah,
go, oh my God, they should use this all the time. This is as good as the one they're using this season. And I
yeah.
was just confused.
And do you know what? As much as I rained on the RB parade with the sponsors being all over the place, because of the gradient of the kind of Miami sunset or whatever it is, it kind of overrides. You don't notice the sponsor placement as much anymore. So I think that livery is better than their regular one.
I agree, and I'm going to give it to Zach Brown for.
AlphaTauri or VCarb or their name of the week. Looks like they're certainly competitive.
They did look competitive. Their name of the week should be "Look at Our Colors Too." That was fun, and they placed people in the points in a big style, both
Yeah,
races, which we will get to. Which we will get to.
yeah. So let's just crack on through the news so that we can start talking about the race weekend. So Nui, we're not quite sure what's going on. The Nui news broke that he's off on the hypercar project until 2025.
Yep.
Sounds like they've done some sort of mutual gentleman's agreement where I think it sounds like his gardening leave won't be like he has to be outside of Red Bull for a year. I think this will be it. They'll move him across the hypercar project for a year, and that's technically him out of F1 for a year, but still doing some service to Red Bull organization. So I think there's kind of been a gentleman's agreement there that's like, yeah, we'll just move you sideways, and then you're free to go wherever you want. But there was some news this week that he might even just be enjoying retirement with his wife. So, but there's other rumors saying that he's potentially going to Williams, which I found a bizarre one. Yeah, I think you found that.
Yeah, I did. So there were a lot. I mean, you could make up a rumor and attribute it to anybody at this point. There's so many newy rumors. But yeah, the one that I did see between a mix of Coffee Corner and other people with BBC accounts and other things was Q1 25. He'll work on the hypercar until then. He'll be on the pit lane until then, or at least into this season. But then no gardening leave after that. So mix it up however you like. His work on the hypercar takes care of that. But so in Q1 25, he's a free agent. A lot of people are saying maybe retirement is next. However, the stories I've also heard are that there's something there with Ferrari. He's said no thank you to Aston Martin. Williams and Andretti are interesting options, and James Vowles has apparently reached out to him. And then, interestingly, in my mind, you could probably attribute him to any team. But then Lewis at the presser before the weekend was asked about Adrian Newey. And he said, well, if you asked me the list of people I'd like to work with in F1, he's at the very top. And they go, have there been any conversations? And Lewis says, well, that's a very personal thing, personal conversations. I can't really get into it. Right? Like, if you're not going to pour fuel on the fire, then just pour some fuel on the fire, Lewis. I mean, that's basically what he did. But speaking of Williams, it was kind of interesting as well in the rumor mill. And you know what? For this one, I probably should get the chopper out just because this one makes me a little sad, but it's also very much a rumor, so we're going to go for it. The rumors were really strong that this weekend could very well be Logan's last, and if it's not his last, it's very close to the end of his time at Williams. That was a very strong rumor, the same strength of Nico going to Audi a couple weeks ago that we found that ended up being true. I hope this is wrong, but I think it's probably right.
I think it's probably right, and I meant to put this into the notes and didn't get a chance, but I think I saw that Kimi has had special dispensation to get his super license. So
they've asked for it. I don't know if he got it. Did they get it already?
No, I think I saw that. Well, I know they've asked for it, but I think I either saw that they really thought it was definitely going to happen because it's only a matter of they're only really moving the goalposts by about like a month or two. It's not like he's only just turned 17. He's going to be 18 in August. So we'll see. And then, this week.
Sorry, I was going to say on Saturday we also saw Claire Williams at the back of the Williams garage. It was great to see her back. See the Williams family that built this team and is I'm hopeful that Vowles has got this going in the right direction. I feel like we're at a place now where he has to break things to get it set right. Like they had to re-break their arm on purpose at the doctor's office so it sets right for the future because things are getting worse in terms of the race car and the race pace from last year. Now again, all they had was high speed, and they had no downforce and no slow speed stuff. So hopefully they're building for the future, but now it doesn't look good. And speaking of doesn't look good, Paul and I met for Monday night. We went out here in Chicago. Pit Lane Paul and I had a blast. We had barbecue and beers and ended up with wine. And by the end of the night, neither one of us looked great because we'd been out for a while. But we had a blast. And we actually solved all of the rumors of silly season. I just can't share any of it because some of it's proprietary knowledge. And after drinking that much, I can't remember what was proprietary and not. So I'm just going to not talk about it too much here. I already shared it all with Rob. But I'll let Paul, the code of silence that I promised will remain strong. I'm not going to tell anyone where Valtteri will be next year after you swore you knew exactly where he'd be next year.
And let me go into a bunch of stuff that you spammed into the notes here. You went on an absolute mission here to find some stuff, didn't you? Look at that.
Couple notes, right? So one, we're getting towards the video vault, but the Netflix teaser for Senna came out this week. A couple minutes. It was interesting to watch. I am very excited for when they drop the Senna movie. I think it's the same guy doing the Senna role who was in Ferrari, doing one of the bit roles in the Ferrari movie. But that was interesting. And then there's a couple legal issues going on that we don't really usually like to cover too much. But apparently Gunter Steiner is suing for breach of his employment agreement, and apparently when and when not bonuses were paid. Not that he got let go. That's not his point. But the termination with cause and payment of his bonus is kind of up in the air. And then Andretti, and this actually, I had this in the notes before they interviewed him on the grid walk. Brundle runs into Andretti on the grid walk today and says, what's going on? He goes, well, I think we're going to be on the grid in 26. And Brundle's like, what? And so then Andretti says, they ask him about this whole Congress thing. And for those not in the United States, we have, like most countries, a very dysfunctional political system. And our Congress members, especially Michigan, which makes sense because when you think of where Cadillac and GM are, got involved, the representative got involved and brought in other representatives from both sides of the aisle. So the first time maybe not quite as dysfunctional. And they signed a letter, which means absolutely nothing to Formula One and Formula One management, and said, why isn't Andretti in? This is anti-competitive. Bang, 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 my gavel. Put us in. That means nothing. But it was at least nice to see. And the last news I have, I'm sorry, this is going around, and I feel like we're kind of jumping on the bandwagon here. But the prices of goods at the Miami Stadium, at the Hard Rock Stadium for the race, carne asada nachos, creamy salsa verde, salsa mexicana, cotija cheese, pickled onion, and cheese sauce for, wait for it, $180. Not $18, not 18.00, $180. $180. And that it takes off from there. They have like a sampler platter, $290. A lobster roll, or lobster rolls, plural, $280. What is happening?
Do you know what? I saw you put this picture in here, and I hadn't zoomed in to see why you'd put in here. This has to be Photoshop. This can't be real.
No, I saw people on TikTok reviewing the $180 nachos and laughing,
gosh.
and they're like, "It's good, but $180? You gotta be kidding me!" Like 10x. It's literally a 10x multiple that they put on the food. I'm not kidding. Like that's
Is it a misprint? Should there be a decimal point before?
That's what I said. No, and it's not like a huge amount. It's not like the catering size.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, if that were you and I, if we were at this race, we would have starved.
Oh yeah, I would have probably started eating your elbow or something. Just like,
I mean, we would have brought extra turkey and cheese rolls in like we did the second day. If that.
We made some great turkey and cheese rolls. They would have pat you down on the way in Miami.
Probably taking it away from you.
Taking it away. Whereas in Canada, they just kind of waved you through and went, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
anyway, so anyone at the race, Rob Reed, we know you're there, brother, friend of the show. Hopefully your food was comped because that was insane. But let's do the video vault because we got to get to the weekend. So, interestingly, I saw the video that Rob talked about beforehand. Unveiling History, Igniting Passion, a Ferrari journey with Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. What this title should have been on the Ferrari channel is we got a new sponsor and we want to put them on the car, and it's happening this weekend, and there'll be a little bit of blue. 8 minutes, not too bad. You kind of see him planning the blue color, and when you watch this, again, they make it sound like, oh yeah, throwback to the past. Bringing back the blue from our history. No, you got a new sponsor and you rolled it out. It's a money grab, we know. What's in the box? Take a peek with Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc on the Ray-Ban Films channel. 85 seconds. So this thing is not real deep. It's all right. They're pulling out miniature things out of a box that are important to them. And I don't know why my algorithm gave me so much Ferrari, but thankfully it wasn't all Ferrari. Alex Albon versus American Slang with Logan Sargent on the Williams Racing channel. 4 minutes. This was fun. I'm not sure it was American slang per se as much as young people slang and other things like that, and they were kind of quizzing each other. It was okay. None of these were must-watches. The thing that I enjoyed, and this is going to, for those of you who listen every week, echoes back to about 3 weeks ago. They did at Sky Sports F1 Lie Detector with Lando, and they had done it with Oscar, if you remember when we reviewed that maybe 4 weeks ago. And this I didn't catch it on YouTube yet because they dropped it either today or late yesterday. And it was shown in the pre-race coverage, and it was fantastic. And so they're asking Lando, did it bother you when Oscar won the sprint race? And he's like, yes, it did. Do you think you're going to win a GP before Oscar? Yes, I do. Who could win a fight? You or George Russell? He's like, me. And then, he's going, and it's like, he's honest about all these. And then some of them he lied, and there was a whole girlfriend situation I'm not going to get into. But then they said, are you going to win your first race with a McLaren? He says, yes. He says, will it be this year? And he said, yes. And like 24 minutes later, he goes out and proves him right. So I loved it. Check it out. Like I said, I saw it on Sky on the pre-race. I'm sure it's on YouTube by now. Rob, any videos to add, or should we move on and close the vault?
No, slam the door shut. Let's get on with race weekend.
All right, yeah, let's go. I can't wait to get there. Start us off. How'd the weekend start on Friday?
Practice, Charles spun, red flag. Everyone lost a whole bunch of time to prepare. Done. Right,
Done.
sprint quali.
Go for it.
Sprint quali. It, it was kind of maybe a little bit of foreshadowing because McLaren's looked fast. Haas looked fast. Danny Rick looked like he was going to be in amongst the mix, and we lost in SQ1. Gasly, Zhou, Bottas, Sargent, and Albon. It really wasn't a good weekend for Williams or Sauber.
No,
Across the
bad.
board, just
the whole
both
weekend.
bad.
And you know what? Interestingly, like so if this is Logan's last weekend, or if it is coming up soon, he can at least get, say, two things happened in his career. Unfortunately, both of them have an asterisk next to it. He got a point. I think it was at Coda last year when Lewis was disqualified. Is that right? And he got promoted to 10th. I could be wrong on that, but I'm fairly certain that's how it happened. And then now, for the first time ever, he out-qualified his teammate, but it was because Albon had a lap deleted, and so Sargent...
Yeah, but what, no. You see,
yeah, come on.
I do think you've been a bit harsh on Sargent there, because if Albon exceeds track limits, then he exceeds track limits. There's no asterisk there. Albon didn't set a time.
I know.
Go faster, Alex. Well, you didn't. You finished last. Anyway.
But he was ahead of him when the time ended, and then lap deleted and popped
through
down.
Through an illegal time, yeah.
I mean, I know. I understand how the rules work. I'm just saying, it feels like twice now he's been handed something else. Here's a present to put on the fridge.
The disqualification I'll give you, but this one, he set a legitimate lap time that was faster than Alex's best.
That's true.
But, that's true. SQ2, both the Mercs dropped out. Not a surprise.
Slow.
Didn't look good this weekend.
No.
Ocon Magnussen, which we'll come back to in the main event.
Oh my God, that guy is a wrecking ball. I love him. He's terrible.
Still collecting penalties now. I heard he was out partying and he got given a 10-second penalty for outrageous dance moves. And Yuki as well. So then we had. I managed to crop the image here completely, didn't I? To take Max off here. So we had SQ3, Max pole, Charles second, Perez, Danny Rick up in fourth, and I'm going to come back to Danny Rick later because he had a weekend of two halves.
Yeah, he did. Well, so did Yuki. Interestingly, so did Yuki. Fascinating for me in the sprint quali, a couple things. The quali is quali, but I do like the shorter windows. I've said that a lot. I like the 12, 10, 8 for the SQ1, SQ2, SQ3. It puts a lot more at risk, and you see teams even in SQ3 doing one run. And we've always talked about making it like a one-shot kind of deal. That's basically what 8 minutes forces if you don't think you have time to pit in between. So I like the timing of it. I'm not wild about the medium, soft requirement. Just either go back to the way it was before, where whatever used at SQ2 or Q2, because there was no SQ back in the day, you had to start the race with, or like, I don't know, just medium, soft doesn't make sense, especially with the overall tire requirements. And I really was expecting more from the McLarens in SQ3, and I was sitting there watching them on the mediums in SQ2, and Lando setting blistering times with all the upgrades, and I'm doing air quotes, because Oscar had half the upgrades, and it was supposed to be about 0.2 of a second slower a lap, potentially. And they both came out and looked terrible in SQ3 on the soft tires. Or not terrible, I should say, but not great. They didn't put it together.
No, I'd agree with terrible. I mean, I think it's a saving grace for them that the main event, the Grand Prix, didn't require soft tires at all.
Yes.
It was a non-starter. Because they looked terrible on the soft tires.
They did.
They look good on the hards. They look good on the mediums. But you put the softs on, and they just became kind of like tanks. Just like I was going to be mean then. I was going to be mean and said they became Mercedes. But
you can't even say Alpines because Esteban got a point. You say they look like Williams.
So you're right. As soon as they put the softs on, I mean, the SQ2 times were phenomenal from McLaren. You thought, hey, this is a sign of things to come, and then the softs just didn't work for them. But you know what? Didn't really matter. But so then we get to the sprint, and in a bizarre way, here's a question for you, right?
Yeah.
Lando getting taken out through no fault of his own within about 8 seconds of the sprint.
Not even 8, 2 seconds.
Well, no, come on. You got to start. You got to get down to the first corner, and then you can get.
It's less than 8. Right? Let's agree it's between 2 and 8.
I think in a bizarre way, as things pan out, because Lando was out so early. No one even got a whiff about what the McLaren's true pace would be on race pace, because literally the best pace they saw was him walking back.
Right, and getting a
mean,
penalty for crossing the track. I was a little disappointed when he got hit. Like you said, I mean, just bounced a car into him. Stroll bounced into him through no fault of Lando's. I was really hoping for the old school radio message.
It's broken! It's broken!
But we didn't get that. That was a disappointment to me. By the way, can we, I don't understand what is going on with these turn one, lap one, turn. I mean, I understand, right? It's 20 cars all going for the same corner at about the same time. But Lewis Hamilton, Lewis F., 7-time world champion Hamilton, Sir Hamilton, decided to bomb it down the middle in a way that we would make fun of any other driver for doing. Lance Stroll pulled a Lance Stroll at the same time that Hamilton did, and Fernando Alonso found himself in the middle like, are they kidding? Like, is this a joke? And then, Lance bounces off and hits Lando. I don't understand. Like, there was not even an investigation. Like,
no, well,
they referred it and then it was done. It was like they didn't even invest. It was crazy.
Well, they referred it, it was done, and then the actual explanation that came out was they looked at it and they went, there is no one party wholly responsible for any of that. So we're just not going to give it. It's a turn one incident. We're not going to give, because if you think about it, you're right. Hamilton flies one side, Stroll goes the other. Alonso can't pivot his car up to run on two wheels on the side, kind of like Knight Rider style, right? So 3 into, 1 basically is the space for that corner doesn't go. But who should back out there? Well, none of them do. They all stay in. None of them back out, and Alonso becomes squeezed. I can understand why the stewards looked at that and went, can we play a get out of jail card here and just say it's a turn one incident? Because
maybe. And they did say that. They did say in their notes, I actually read the write-up. In the write-up from Formula One, from the stewards, it says we have more leeway on lap one, turn one situations. So I get it, but come on, man. Lewis, I love Lewis. But that was a rookie move.
But if Stroll isn't the other side, then Alonso's got somewhere to go. So again, who do you give it to?
But he wasn't even near the apex. Lewis was out of control.
Like you said, Stroll did a Stroll. So you got two of them probably making ridiculous moves. So how can you say that, well, because he did it and he did it, we're going to give you a joint penalty because you were both stupid at the same time?
Correct.
I'm not sure F1 allows you to do that. So because you have to say that one party is responsible for it. So
Lance F. Hamilton is responsible for that one. It was a mess. But what happened because of that, Danny Rick moved up to third. And at this point, I am loving it. I'm like, the Honey Badger is third in a race in this beautiful car. This is pretty good.
Yeah, and then we've got this weird thing where I'm thinking, the commentary team are trying to say, so Perez isn't making a dent into Charles. So they're saying, he's keeping Danny Rick in DRS to try to keep the faster science behind him. I'm like, that's a really damning indictment of Checo in a rocket ship of a Red Bull if he thinks he needs to keep Danny Rick as a buffer. I actually don't think he was. I don't think he had the pace to pull away from Danny Rick. And they were making that more out of that than was really there.
Checo spent the whole weekend making no impression on the car in front of him. Right? I mean, am I wrong?
No, you're spot on.
He was like, I'm in fifth place. I'm happy here. I'm just going to hold the guy off behind me and not get near the guy in front of me and call it a day. And I'm sitting there like, what is happening? But it was kind of neat, right? Because we had Checo, Danny Rick, Carlos, and then Oscar rolled up to the scene. And they had some great battles. I agree, man. I loved this sprint. The whole thing was fun.
Yeah, and we got a little bit of foreshadowing where some of the most I'm almost want to use the word violently, so I will. Some of the most violently contested overtakes were for almost like non-positions.
12, 13, 14.
Yeah. And Magnussen was just deciding that I am going to fight Lewis this entire weekend. It started, we had Hamilton was after him for ages, and lap 11 he gets him, but the K-Mag comes back through, and then he's like, I'm probably not going to stay ahead, so I'm just going to ride the chicane, whatever. And this was just a foreshadowing for the rest of the kind of the main thing. These two going back and forth all the time was just like, I love it.
I loved it too. And I loved it too. And then, but Kevin starts getting, as you say, he starts getting kind of feisty, right? He cuts the chicane you just mentioned. And I'm like, that's a penalty. And then on lap 11, Hamilton tries to take K-Mag after the straight. So what is that, into 17? And then Magnussen decides, you know what? I'm going to do the old school Max Verstappen. and I'm going to cut straight in front of you, but I'm not even going to stay on the track. I'm just going to make sure you can't take the position. I'm going to go blistering off the track myself and then come back on. But then in Magnussen style, he comes back on and then runs into Lewis. I'm like, this is perfect. I mean, is he drunk? Like, what is happening out here? Is he not paying attention? Is he listening to the radio in his headset? Because he was all over the place. And a lot happened after the race, and he said I was doing it to hold him back because of Nico and it was ahead. And that's not, come on. He did that in Saudi Arabia. That was obvious to give him a pit stop.
Yeah.
He didn't need to do that here.
And then the best thing is when all this is going on, little old Yuki's sitting behind this and going, I think I'm going to come right all the way through here. And
I loved it. This was where Yuki turned his weekend around. It's like the old Sylvester Stallone Over the Top movie where he's the arm wrestler. Yuki basically saw all this happening, and he's like just turning his helmet around. He's like, and now it's time for me to turn it on for the weekend. And he did. And he never slowed down after that. It was amazing. He pops through, takes everybody. Carlos, by lap 12 of 19, Carlos was trying to take Danny Rick for 7 laps. 7 laps. Carlos.
Sure it wasn't 70. It just felt like forever that
The
Carlos.
whole weekend, Carlos was following behind people like a second away. Basically, Carlos Sainz's race for the whole weekend was 2 things. Hanging right on the car in front of him, unable to pass, and then freaking out about Oscar Piastri. That was the whole... I've never seen anyone freak out so bad. He's still on a walkie-talkie to race control. Like, have you seen Piastri? I mean, he was so mad. Look at that.
You're jumping ahead, and then finally it kind of all settled down, and we really only probably had Sainz trying to get Danny Rick, and he did basically finish like within a cigarette paper behind Danny Rick. But what a defensive drive from Danny Rick to keep him behind. We end up with Verstappen taking it like pretty easily from Leclerc, 3.5 seconds.
Yep.
Perez, Danny Rick, Sainz, Piastri, Hulk, and Hamilton. It's down to 8th, isn't it, for
8,
points
yep.
in the sprint? Yep. So, and little Yuki hanging out there, almost making it.
Dude,
so
Yuki on softs, by the way. Give him some extra credit for making that whole thing happen on soft tires, which was, we've already said, were not good. K-Mag got 3 penalties worth 25 seconds, and then there was Lewis, and then I didn't understand this. They said he got a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane behind the safety car because you still have to follow the 80 kilometer per hour rule, and he was 10 kilometers over. But was it a time penalty put on the sprint? Because nothing happened for the Grand Prix. I don't even know.
No, I don't know. I don't even know.
So was he not 8th?
Yeah, he was 8th. Let's move on.
All right. I enjoyed it, by the way, just to close out the sprint. I really enjoyed it too.
And I don't often say that. The sprints, you and I have both kind of gone, it's all right. I will say I'm warming to this idea that I think because the Parc Fermé opening again gives them a chance to change it.
It's not the same thing again.
It's not the same thing. And I think they're allowed to experiment a little bit more. So the sprint is almost kind of like this FP3 race hybrid. Yeah. It's like they're still kind of thinking about the Grand Prix, but because they know they can change the setup, you might be inclined to run something a little bit more out there for the sprint, knowing that you can maybe dial it differently for the main event. So I'm actually warming to this idea of the sprint the way it is, and definitely enjoyed this sprint. One of the best sprints I've seen, I think.
So I'll say this. I enjoyed the sprint, and I've been pretty down on sprints. I agree with you. I'd much rather have a sprint than just another practice session. And the order of it makes more sense now. It never made sense before. It was always like you had quali, and then you had the sprint thing in the middle, and then the race. And now it makes a lot more sense where you have practice, sprint, quali, sprint, open Parc Fermé up for changes to quali, and then the race.
Yeah.
And like that works. I like this. This was good. And can I say one more thing? Like I wasn't kidding before. The Miami track, it's really growing on me. Like I did not like it the last couple years. I kind of made fun of it a little. I thought the first race was bad. The second race was okay. I know this race is good for a lot of reasons, but let me just say this in all seriousness. Like turns 13, 14, 15, before you get into the dangerous 16 on that one corner. But when you're going around that chicane, there's elevation changes into the corners. And then
That's
the 16,
amazing.
When you get that concrete wall on the side, which everyone kissed about 10 times, and then we're going to get into the race in a second. But when the Alpines went side by side, I'm like, you can't do that there. How'd they do that? They did that. Like, I loved it. And it felt like, and I could be wrong on this, I probably am, it felt like DRS opened later on the big back straight. Like there was the detection point, but then there was a while until the wing opened, and I kept thinking,
Yes.
did they not hit the button? And then it would open, but it wasn't enough to just do an automatic overtake. You still had to have
DRS
courage, which is your point. You always have to get
Yes.
you just in the braking zone, let the driver make the move.
I'm going to give chef's kiss to Miami for DRS because I think we didn't see any breeze bys. Now, the only time you saw a breeze by is if somebody nailed it in the sections leading up to DRS and got close enough.
Right,
and if you do that, and if you do that, then absolutely. But if you were just kind of there in the just under a second, the moment your flap opened, you weren't going to get into the braking zone. You needed to make your moves and be close enough for DRS to count. And I absolutely loved it. And I agree. Brundle was down on that chicane corner and he was comparing it to Monaco, where he was like at the swimming pool complex. And he was saying, like, when they see them come in and I turn around and look behind me, it's not till you're down at this level that you realize the elevation change going into that chicane. That is a blind chicane as they come up the hill. And you don't realize it's so much of a hill until you see that shot. So, no, I actually quite enjoyed this race a couple of years ago. I think you were always wanting more because you're a Florida boy and you felt it needed to hit some higher heights. So maybe it's taken a couple of years for you to appreciate it. But I'm glad you're all in.
I warm up slowly.
Exactly. So anyway, we roll on to the main quali event, and unfortunately, it was kind of more of the same for Sauber. We had Bottas and Zhou were out. Sargent was out. Magnussen was out because he was probably still counting his penalties. But here's where we kind of went hero to zero. Danny Rick had done a phenomenal sprint, brought it home in fourth, and then seemed to forget how to drive this track and crashed out in 18th.
I think somehow the Toro Rosso team only has one good racing driver at a time. And it's sort of a ethereal thing, right? There's a spirit involved. And the drivers don't know about it. The team principal, Laurent Mekies, doesn't know about it. But when Yuki made that turn my helmet around move on Lewis, and he did his thing, and he went through the whole thing, Danny Rick had lost his mojo at this point. And so now Danny Rick was crap. But Yuki was on the rise because Danny Rick goes out in Q1, as you said, with the Sauber boys, Logan and Magnussen. Q2, we lose Albon to close out Williams as a whole. We lose both Alpine boys, and we lose both Aston Martins. Aston Martin also had a weekend to forget. But Yuki makes it into Q3.
Yeah.
And he had a heck of a race, which we'll talk about in a second. But at this point, we have Max, Charles, Carlos, and Checo with Lando and Oscar right behind to start the race off. And I'm thinking to myself...
go
ahead.
Sorry, just before we finish off quali, wasn't it a really weird quali where the first run was exciting to see where everybody slotted in?
Q3?
Who's Q3?
Yeah.
Like the first run was really, really close. It's like, right, who's going to slot in where? And Max took it. Charles right behind. Sainz not too far away either. And you're like, oh, this is going to be great for the second run. And then the second run, all the tires suddenly went, yeah, we don't really want to grip anymore. And everybody across the board, not just like Leclerc messing up or Sainz messing up, even Max, everybody was half a second slower, almost to the man. Everybody was 0.5, yellow symbol, up arrow on the screen thing, 0.5 up. Like, what? I mean, I know the track temperature went down by like 2 or 3 degrees between it, but that was insane.
It was.
Nobody set a better time in their second run. It was bizarre.
Some of the reasons I love the early quali sessions are because you're trying to get ahead of the cutoff. And as cars come across the line and Crofty gets excited and they're changing views and he doesn't know which car's doing what and he's making mistakes and freaking out and loving it and I'm loving it. I love that. This was the opposite of that. This is now for all the marbles. This is Q3, not Q1 or Q2. We're not just doing cutoffs. We're doing pole position. And everyone's coming around the track with yellow sectors. And I'm like, really? Like everybody had yellow sectors. There was like a couple greens. There were no purples, like you say, and it was just kind of wild. It was like it went out with a dud. It was like all the air was out of the balloon by the end, like, and it's over. And you know what? That's okay. That's okay because you know what? Like I said, I thought qualies, both of them, but even this one especially, were a little boring. Nothing wrong with it. It was just quali. But the race and the sprint were both fantastic. And so it set that up. And like you say, I agree with you. Opening Parc Ferme after the sprint and giving teams time to make changes before the regular quali, the GP quali, I thought it was great. So wherever people are listening right now, if you're in your car, taking a walk, on a plane, on a jog, at your work, in your lab, doing your thing, I hope you guys had as much fun this weekend as we did because the best is yet to come. Now we get to the race.
now we get to Sunday, and I'd had, just to make it all about me for a minute, Brian, I'd had like a crazy Sunday because my daughter had Girl Scouts camporee. I'd had to fly up to the lake where they were camping to pick her up, drop her back at the house, fly down to my soccer game in the morning, which, by the way, we won 2-1, which was a great result.
Congratulations.
Fly back to my house, get changed and showered, out to my kids' swim banquet because it was the end of year swim banquet. And all the seniors that are leaving and going to college are all doing these speeches, and they're great speeches, and everyone's crying. I'm looking at my wristwatch and going, okay, but if you might want to hurry it up because I now have about 15 minutes before lights out. Got back into my house at like 3:56, like 4 minutes before lights out, TV on, everyone like, go, I don't care what you do now, I'm watching this race. Oh my gosh, literally just made it. And what an absolute treat for the next hour and 45 minutes or whatever it was. I forget where we'll end up going for the result. I actually thought there were battles everywhere for the entire race, and there was something to talk about. Now, right from the start, Charles decided to put it in reverse. Everyone flew past. Checo just decided
to pull a Lewis Hamilton.
But worse than Lewis Hamilton, because at least Lewis Hamilton braked. I think Checo went, I'm going to try a new move where I don't think you need to brake to go around the first corner.
Oh my God.
How close was he to taking out Max?
So I'll be honest, when it happened, first of all, this was the first thing I've watched live the whole year. I was unable to do Saturday. So I was the most excited person in America. I was running around like just screaming and excited, and Checo goes crazy, and you could kind of see it coming because Charles going slow and then goes to the right, and Checo's like, well, I'll have him. So he goes to the inside and then decides, like you say, like brakes are optional. And then when he decides to apply them, it was basically the old school disc brakes from cars in the 50s and 60s where it was all binary. It's either all on or nothing. And he went all on and went and just went straight through. I did not know how close he was to Max. I saw what he did to Carlos. Carlos had to dodge him, and Carlos comes back on, and then Charles is getting used to his situation from dodging Checo, and then Carlos has to dodge Charles, and then Checo rejoins really unsafely, which again I still think should have been a penalty. He just comes straight back on and almost hits two more cars. And in the meanwhile, Oscar is basically like, like Danny Rick at the sprint race. He's like, oh, I'll have all these positions, thanks, and just kind of goes up the inside. And I'm like, oh my God, this is brilliant. Half the upgrades, and he's in second place.
I mean, when they were interviewing Charles after the race, I mean, he basically, I know he didn't say this, but he might as well have said in his interview, yes, I just closed my eyes and hoped that I wasn't in a crash. Because when you saw the onboard from Charles, you just saw Checo. It's like Roadrunner coming through.
But I didn't know how close he was to Max. He was inches from Max's rear wing and tire.
Oh, my gosh.
And then the Alpines, I mentioned this earlier. So, again, I love teammate battles. We talked about it with Nico Rosberg talking about fines and how teammates battle. Oh, the Alpines, for what has been all pain for the whole beginning of this season, they decided to show out and really just race each other. They raced whomever they could. They both had their lightweight chassis, which means they were down instead of being overweight chassis, which is funny because usually when you come to America, you get fatter, but that's okay. And so the point is these guys were going for it, and they were battling and going around corners, and they interviewed Esteban afterwards. And he said, I didn't expect Pierre to stay there on the outside of turn 16 against the concrete wall. I don't know how they didn't hit each other. The camera angle actually showed Esteban sliding over. I didn't think there was room for a car. I'm like, did Pierre somehow shrink the car down a little bit at that point? Like a magic, magical kind of situation? That was wild. They were next to each other through the hardest corners on the course, the chicane, the up and down elevation, the concrete wall. They didn't give in. And somewhere, Otmar was like, crash already. But they didn't, and Bruno won. But anyway, wow, that was great. I mean, like the beginning of this race, the first couple laps, I'm sitting there I couldn't believe the quality.
Yeah, I know. And you've got like Hamilton was struggling to heat up his hard. So we got like Hulkenberg now. It's like Hamilton was always fighting a Haas this week. That was great. Piastri was just like on an absolute mission.
Actually, I'm sorry. Piastri went up to third and then took Charles for second at that one point.
Yes. Yeah. And I said in the notes, is he eating his tires too quickly here? Because we know this is going to be a one stop, but Piastri was just absolutely flying.
And
And
then,
like you say, just half the upgrades. But
yeah,
and then you got Sainz. Look, I'm a Sainz fan, but
me too.
I don't like this whole
I'm faster. Tell him to get out of the way.
I'm faster, time to get out of the way. Like if you are faster, there's this thing called overtakes where you can just go past the car in front. Um,
Well, so Charles was right behind Oscar, and then Carlos was right behind Charles. And Carlos, like we said, spent most of the weekend, with the exception of his Oscar time later, just right behind somebody. So I know there have been a lot of stories that the cars are throwing off more air to the car behind them than they did in 2022, and that it's progressively changed and people are doing it on purpose so there's less ease to follow. I don't know. I know there's some accuracy to that. I loved this whole weekend because there were so many people sitting in DRS for laps and laps and laps at a time. And I don't mean DRS trains. I mean like trying to overtake, backing out, trying again. And I loved that. This was one of my favorite sort of close, as the Brits would say, ding-dong battles back and forth the whole time. You're a ding-dong, Rob. And so I love just watching that. And like, again, I thought it was great. But Carlos, please, can we swap positions? You know that call's not getting answered. He's not on the team next year. I mean, what do they say? Charles, you are our driver of the future. We're checking if you could get out of the way, please. Never going to happen.
And I think that call does happen if you are consistently in DRS, and let's say you're not zero 0.8 or 0.9 seconds behind, but you're 0.2 seconds behind, and Charles is losing ground to the car in front. You're basically telling the team, look, I don't want to dive bomb my teammate. Can we swap it around amicably? Now that I think does get answered. The problem with Sainz here is he was never really in a position to put a move on Charles. He was kind of getting close. He would close up under DRS down to like say 0.4 seconds, but 0.4 seconds was still too many car lengths to actually make a move. So you're just kind of crying about nothing there a little bit.
But it was fun. I hadn't had one of those radio messages in a while. He's like, can we potentially, I'm faster. I could go faster. And it was...
Copy, we'll check that.
We'll check that to get back to you. I hadn't heard one of those in a while. I was like, when you get that message as a Ferrari driver, you know the answer is no. You should just move on. But yeah, like you said earlier, Lewis and the Hulk were going back and forth by lap 10. It was pretty fun to watch them kind of some Magnussen-type moves out of Hulk at first, and then he kind of calmed down. But... by lap 10, and Albon pits in a second, in lap 10, it was tight 1 through 6, and then a gap to Hulk, and then it was tight 7 through 16. Yeah. And I'm like, that is awesome, because it wasn't all quite DRS, but it was close, but it was also, like we said, there were a lot of people trying moves, especially at the end of the straight into 17. They're coming down like someone jigs left, someone jigs right, they're kind of going at it, and then they try the switcheroos, which didn't really work with the track layout. Oh, man, I'm so excited. This was such a good race. And we're only on lap 10.
And then Albon pits, and that really seals the deal that he's not going to do anything this weekend because it's a one-stop strategy unless anything else happens. So he goes onto the hards at lap 11. I mean, they were saying you've at least got to extend this out to go to hard. So I thought Albon's race was run at this point. 12, Stroll, Sargent, and Bottas come in. Again, people that unfortunately weren't really going to trouble the leaderboards at all because it just wasn't working for them. And kind of then we had others coming in again. Hulk and Gasly came in. So again, people that weren't really moving anything. But we basically then had Checo not being able to close in on the Ferraris. But we did have Lando coming in on Checo, coming in hot, looking really quick. And thought he was going to pass him. Didn't work, didn't happen. Checo pits at lap 18. And the radio message for the weekend for me, and I know hindsight is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
But as that kind of the cork is unleashed and Norris is away, they say to him, "Go get Sainz. You can push on now. We're not racing Checo. You need to go and make ground on the Ferraris." And Lando comes back and says, "Yeah, I'll go get him."
That was awesome.
He does. He takes off and you knew he had the bit between his teeth. You knew he had a fast car underneath him, and he just went. And it was like, I think it was a 5-second delta, and it was coming down. It was coming down at you could see it on the leaderboard that he was making those grounds on Sainz. It was amazing.
The McLaren seemed, first of all, I'll say this again at the end, but let's hope this wasn't just track dependent. Both Red Bull's vulnerability and McLaren's speed. Let's hope it's not track dependent. 2 is they got faster relative to others as the car got lighter, as the gas burned off. I say relative to others because everyone gets faster as the gas burns off, but they got faster as the race went on, and that was awesome. And also, they didn't need the soft tire, which was their kryptonite. So all things were looking good for McLaren, and I realized around lap 21, and by the way, I did love that radio message. I'll go get him. The opposite of when Esteban Ocon announces himself, like Lando was prompted. Go hunt him down. He goes, get him. Esteban, on the other hand, goes, let him know I'm coming, and then never made it there. I got to go find that radio message. You let them know. You call up whomever team it was and tell them I'm on my way. And he never got close. That was Mexico, I want to say, but I could be wrong. So anyway, by lap 21, we're getting into the middle of the race, and the Aston Martins are 11th and 17th. Whoa, they had a bad weekend all around. Like, it wasn't like a disaster where they're crashing into each other over and over again just at the beginning, just once early on in the sprint. But like it was a weekend to forget. And then it gets kind of fascinating because then Max takes out the bollard at turn 15 at the chicane. He runs right into it, and he had to kind of make a move. He waited too long to bail out of the thing. And I love the onboard where it's stuck basically on his wing and then kind of on the cockpit and then kind of just rolling around. And they were, what was it, like a lap or so? They were speculating, will there be a safety car or a VSC? Because they can't leave that out there. And all the drivers who needed a pit were like, you need to get this out of the road, please. And so the VSC happens. And this is, I like your thought on this. The VSC happens, 2 marshals. Someone said 1. It's actually 2 marshals. I watched them go out there and get the pieces. It was less than a lap. It was a half a lap of VSC, which, great job by the marshals. But not everyone got a chance to get a little tasty VSC pit stop, which actually ended up benefiting teams who didn't get it because then they got the full safety car later. But I don't remember lots of VSCs that last that short. I always kind of felt like there was like an unsaid agreement where it'll be like a lap and then they'll turn it off. So everyone gets a shot at the pits. And I guess that's dumb because I remember in Baku one time Max didn't get it. Anyway, there were teams who at the time lost out on a chance at a cheap pit stop. The leaders.
Yeah, I mean that's just the way the cookie crumbles. We all want these things to be out of the way as quickly as they can. So
true.
I don't think there's no reason to make it last a complete lap. But like you say, it didn't help any of them. So then we ended up with the front 3, which I kind of wish I'd written down who it was at this point. But I'm gonna say it was
Norris, Piastri, and
another car.
Max.
Was it still Max? Max.
So
we're like, well, how long are they going to make these this kind of first stint last? Because the longer you can push the mediums, then the better you'll have hards for the rest of the race. So it was like, okay, this is kind of looking interesting. Hamilton came in at lap 27, which like was almost like half distance.
Yep.
So like he'd started on hards. So you're looking for a really long first stint to do a nice short stint on the mediums and be fast. It's like, no, my mediums will toast after 27. It's like, okay, that's going to be a long old second stint, Lewis. But yeah, and I think, like you said, that on the notes, Charles, ever since Max had come in, Charles had stayed 3 seconds behind. Max was not driving off into the distance at any point of this race. Okay, yes, he opened up a little gap at the beginning, but normally by this point, what are we looking at here? Like 27, 28, like just over halfway race distance.
10 seconds ahead of him.
I was going to say, normally we're measuring his lead in double digits.
Right. Seconds. Agreed. And it was fascinating because now Charles is right behind him. I mean, not right behind him, but behind him on track by 3 seconds. And it was basically 3 seconds for many laps. And at this point on 28, eventually Oscar and Carlos box to kind of like unleash the cork in the bottle because we just had the VSC. They didn't benefit, so they go for it. And Max says he's having trouble with grip. And I write to Rob, is Max vulnerable? At this time, it set in that Charles is hanging on to him. He's not pulling away. He's complaining all weekend about the car, and we're at race pace now. Like, this is halfway in, half the fuel's burnt off. Like, this is where Red Bull even gets faster and where they just take off and you don't see them anymore. And we're thinking this could be amazing. We may have something here. And then just to put a little extra oomph on the idea we have something, Magnussen's like, you know what, guys? I'm going to end this guy's career over here by crashing him out in his last chance to prove himself. And then I'm going to make this other guy's career over here by giving him his first win. And he does this thing where he decides, you know what, I got my front wheels next to your rear wheels, and I'm on the outside of a corner after you've passed me, but I'm not going to back off, and I'm not going to go off the track. I'm just going to crash us both out. And I think that was 100% Magnussen's fault, as you said as well in the notes. That was not a Sargent situation.
No, not at all. So I feel really sorry for Sargent on that one, because it was like, not a way. He was actually driving pretty well. He was up there. He wasn't like down in 19th, 20th. He was actually doing a decent race, and K-Mag's just completely taking him out. So then we get a safety car. We got a pit lane frenzy where I didn't even try to write down how many people tried to come in. But everybody came in. But then Norris pits, and then we had a really weird situation where Norris pitted, and I'm looking at the leaderboard on the left-hand side, and
he's still in first. Said
Verstappen. Before he came in, Verstappen was 14 seconds behind. I'm like, okay, 14. It's 20 seconds. He was a few seconds behind. Yeah, okay, maybe he's going to be closer to Verstappen by the time this all shakes out. But what's going on? Then the next update, and Max is 30 seconds behind Lando. Lando hasn't come into the pits yet. I'm like, what the hell's going on? Then Lando starts coming into the pit lane. They show Max, and the safety car has picked up Max. I'm like, but Max isn't the leader. And then Lando comes out ahead of that procession.
And then goes around and is a lap ahead.
A lap ahead. And they're like, I've never seen this before, where it actually felt like the safety car picked up. Are they just so used to Max leading?
Well, it's not a Bernd Mailander situation. Someone in race control told them when to go out. It's not like Bernd is sitting there in the Mercedes or Aston, I didn't see what it was this weekend, and like, all right, now I should go. Someone told him to go, which was a mistake at that time, but it was fine because they just let I guess everyone else is a lapped car, hypothetically. They let them all go by. What they really should have done is some real dirty injustice and made Max stay there a lap down and everyone else gets to go around. Abu Dhabi 21, I see you. Just kidding. This is a joke for all the Max fans. I love Max now. Not for today, for other reasons, but I'm a Max fan. Like, we'll get into that a different day. But yeah, that was a mistake. Didn't really make a big difference because they line him up fine a lap later, and it's Lando right in front of Max. This is it. Lando's on fresher tires. It's a race to the finish. It's on lap 32 of 57, and I thought Lando took off at the wrong time, and Max was right behind him.
Screwed up the restart big start.
I'm freaking out. I'm literally standing and pacing and staring, and then Lando just starts driving off into the sunset. And I'm like, there's no way. And so I'm thinking to myself, does Max have floor damage? Did the Ballard do something? They said the wing was fine. I'm hopeful. I'm an optimist today. After the first two races, which I thought were terrible, and I wanted to make this a pickleball podcast, I'm an optimist now. McLaren's can take it to Max. I hope it wasn't track dependent. I hope he didn't have damage. I hope this is what we can actually expect, a little bit of battle at the front, because A, this whole race was great. B, having the battle at the front made it even greater, and it was just amazing. And then Lando just started pulling away, and I was clutching at my tinkle, and I loved it.
So, oh my gosh, I don't know how to follow that. Yeah, I mean, I don't think Max has damage, because if Max has got that much damage, I think the Ferraris are fast and reels him in. But he doesn't. He's got enough pace to stay ahead of Charles. Actually, Charles doesn't even eat into that.
Nope,
and he was moaning, before he even hit the bollard, he was moaning about just not getting the steering. It was just, the tyres weren't working. So I actually think, maybe it will be track dependent. I don't know. Hopefully the McLaren's upgrades have kind of helped close that delta. But all of a sudden we're watching basically Lando just eking out a little bit. First of all, it was just like, can he get a second clear?
Right. And
I don't know if there was a great little moment where Charles was in DRS of Max and he put a move on Max, and did that take Max's attention away, because there was just like a lap or two where all of a sudden it just went to something like 1.096 or so. Just literally about as much over 1 second as you can possibly be to be out of DRS. And from that moment, although back then I was not as confident, obviously hindsight now is fantastic, but from that moment, Lando never looked back. All he did was build that gap.
We were both very nervous about it. We
basically wrote, like I said, why do I feel like everyone's like going, this is going to be Lando's day. We're at lap 37. There's 20 laps still to go. I'm like, so much can happen in 20 laps. This is insane.
Well, and then you can't even pay attention to it because you have Carlos and Oscar, and you have Oscar in front, and you have Carlos trying to pass him. And I'll tell you what I saw. I think it was into 17. Carlos tries to get him on the outside. And it may not have been 17 now that I think about it. But at no point is Carlos, no, it definitely wasn't actually. It was at the other straight. But at no point is Carlos ahead of him. At no point.
No.
And Oscar didn't even go off the track. And Carlos loses his mind that he gained an advantage. He was ahead of you, and he didn't go off the track. What are we talking about here? And he is freaking out on the radio, like just nonstop. It was one of the craziest radio messages. It was even better than Lance's from a couple races ago. It's even better than that, and he's freaking out about he needs a penalty. This is ridiculous. Give me the spot back. You need to call them. You need to call McLaren and have what he has a phone number. Like he's gonna hi Zach on the. Can I get Zach on the phone? Press 3 for Zach Brown. Press 4 for Andrea Stella. Like what? And he's going nuts. And they do. I think because of how worked up he was, they did a quick review. No further action. And they told this to Carlos, and that made him even more mad.
Yeah, and then so much so that he threw one down the inside that he probably shouldn't have done.
Definitely
shouldn't. Looked like there wasn't going to be contact, but then all of a sudden there was a lockup at the very, very final second, which just ruined Oscar's. I'd just written in the notes, Piastri, such a mature head on young shoulders, because he was doing such a great job of staying ahead of Carlos. Then Carlos just smashes his front wing, and poor old Piastri goes backwards because that front wing was completely toast.
And that's all on Carlos.
Yeah,
Carlos locked up right in front of him because he made a bad move in his anger, and he literally, you saw Oscar's wing fold up like an accordion. I mean, that thing's done at that point. And every piece of those wings are needed and important. Man, that really bothered me. I mean, I thought that was a terrible move by Carlos, and we both are Team Carlos. But come on, man, like that. Yeah. You were still mad about the earlier situation, which didn't exist. I hope he looks in retrospect and we see something today or tomorrow where he apologizes to Oscar because he was wrong twice, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, agree. And then stuff starts getting real. We're now not 20 laps from the end. We're now 10 laps from the end. And Lando's 5 seconds up, or 5.2. And it's like, oh my God, is this going to happen? And my brain is going, don't even start thinking about it. Because otherwise, any second now, we're going to hear Crofty going, is that Lando Norris with a puncture? Or the engine letting go? Or as things actually started going on, all of a sudden, as if my heart couldn't take it, every car from 15th down to 20th suddenly had the biggest desire to make the most ridiculous passes in the most stupid places, as if they were tempting another safety car, one of which was Piastri, who was on a charge. But when they came over the radio and they were like, yeah, Oscar, Lando's leading, so let's not get a safety car. Because Piastri, I don't know whether he thought he could get to the points, because he was on fresh tyres and he was an absolute rocket ship and he was taking everybody. But it just seemed that wherever the camera panned, there was somebody doing something stupid that was about to result in a crash. I was like, Lando cannot lose this because of a poor safety car restart.
I know, and from his own teammate would have been worse. But so when they said that to Oscar, I thought to myself, someone needs to tell Lance Tiffy the same thing. Like, can we pass that message on to Magnussen? I mean, these are the guys who are dive bombing everyone. Let's tell the riskiest people. But they did it. He did it. His first race, I mean, what was it, 2021 in Russia when he was leading with like 8 laps to go and then the rain came and it all came unraveled real fast and he had a couple other chances around then. I felt so great for Lando. I felt so great
amazing.
For Lando.
I didn't actually. Amazing how much you can see how well he's respected across the entire paddock because when he'd finished, when he got back, before he even got anywhere near crowd surfing with his team, which was amazing. The drivers that all sought him out to come and celebrate with him, I thought that was amazing. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Fernando came up, George came up, like everybody came up and just wanted to just basically congratulate this guy because everyone knows how much he deserved the victory. It was amazing.
Well, first of all, I would say when they were driving back on the cooldown lap, the number of people pulled up next to him and wished him well was amazing. Yeah. We didn't see a lot of that, but you could catch it. Lewis pulled up next to him and actually clapped. Instead of just a thumbs up, he put his hands up, let go of the wheel, and clapped high up so Lando could see it. You saw Max pull up next to him. So many drivers pulled up next to him. And then, like you say, All these people came over to him, from Fernando to Danny Rick, teammates passed, to Carlos, a best buddy teammate passed, to so many other drivers. Charles was right there, and of course Max with a big hug for him, and Esteban, and so many others. I mean, I think he named just about everybody, and it was amazing to hear.
Yeah, and Zach Brown on the pit wall, just like,
oh my God, everyone at McLaren's going to have a
bruise
bruise on their shoulder from all the punches he's given everybody walking around.
But what I have realized now is, and maybe other drivers are going to take a leaf out of this, is that if you get some kind of injury, so if you either have your appendix removed, or if you break your nose, or on a night out, that supercharges you to take the fight to Max.
Only if you have your appendix out, or if it wasn't a broken nose, it was cut it on a glass drunk in the Netherlands, and someone wrapped him up like a mummy. That was the best. You mentioned that last week when you said it looked like someone had taken the tape and wrapped him up like a mummy. And there he is out there with the little Band-Aid on his nose, winning the race. Gosh, that was great. The whole race was good. The whole weekend was good. I love Lando. I love that he won this. I'm happy for McLaren. I can't wait to see what happens in 2 weeks at Imola. I am on the edge of my seat for 2 whole weeks to see, now that Oscar will have the other half of the upgrades. Lando has the upgrades. Ferrari is bringing a bunch of upgrades. I can't wait. And we have also, let's not sleep on what's happening in the midfield. Okay, Williams and Sauber are not doing great right now. Maybe this is a little more track dependent because Sauber looked better the week prior. Williams looked bad the whole year. But Alpine, in their lightweight cars, which are now caught up to everyone else's weight, looked frisky. Esteban got a point, which brought them above others in the championship. Haas is looking good, hard to pass. When Magnussen isn't driving like an idiot, they're doing really well. Hulk's doing great. You have the RBs, which, again, only one can do well at a time, but both of them, Danny 4th in the sprint, and Yuki was 7th in the race. That's intense, man. And so, I look at all these teams, and I'm thinking, and Aston Martin, maybe they'll be back at the sharper end of the stick. Who knows? They had a bad weekend. But I look at these teams, there's a lot of battles that are actually really fascinating, and only really one team you write off, Williams, and depending on the track, maybe Sauber. But after that, I mean, you don't know what's going to happen. It's a great time to be an F1 fan.
Yeah, agreed. It was just, I think, a really good, one of my favorite races of the year. And that's not because Max didn't win. It was because maybe actually because Max got beaten. And I know Sainz won earlier in the year, but that was because, Max's car was, he was out. It was different circumstance. Here, I honestly think, and even if it was track dependent, I don't care, because that's just what's going to happen over the course of a season. Fair and square, nobody DNF'd, nobody got huge damage. Okay, maybe Lando lucked out a little bit with the safety car, but he was already on a mission on a good strategy anyway that was probably going to put him right up Max's trumpet on fresher tyres. We saw a car beat Red Bull with no little asterisks against it of, oh yeah, but their car blew up, or oh yeah, but they didn't finish. It was just great, and like I put in the notes, I think I held my breath for about the last 15 laps because I was just waiting for something to go wrong on Lando's car. But if we look at our predictions from last week,
I've already figured out a way to defend myself. So explain. You tell us how we did.
I mean, we both went for Max for winners, so we both were close because he was second. Like he said, I mean, I actually loved Max's post-race interview when they he was so actually pretty humble, was happy for Lando, and basically said, look, if I've had a bad weekend and I finish second, I'll take that. And I thought, yeah, you're allowed to celebrate second, and you're also allowed to enjoy the fact that Lando won. So I thought Max did well there.
2 races ago, I think it was Japan maybe, when he won, and his partner Kelly's daughter Penelope was there. One of her first races in person. She's been to a few, but one of her first recent ones in person. And she was cheering for Max. And you could actually hear her on the telecast, and they actually explained it was her, yelling, "Yay, Maxie, yay, Maxie." And her excitement for him. Kids are the great BS detector. Max is obviously a good guy. Like, a kid wouldn't cheer for someone like that if he were the persona that you see on the track.
Yeah.
So, for me, that softened my heart even more. And if a kid can be that big a fan of yours, That's pretty amazing. So yeah, Max, agreed. I thought it was genuine and earnest from Max. You'd had Max, Lando, Carlos, so obviously you had the winner and the second place guy in your picks. Carlos didn't make the podium. I had Max, Checo, Charles, so I had 2 and 3, but I didn't have the winner. So we both had 2 podium finishers. Didn't get the order right, but you did have the first. So I give you your 1A on 1B if there's a recap on that.
We both had 2 out of 3. So
I was so sure Max was going to win. A neighbor of mine walked by this morning. I was working in my yard, and we were chatting a bit. He's an F1 fan. Andrew, if you're listening, shout out. And so we made a deal that if Max didn't win, we'd streak up and down the street. And we both texted each other. The deal was off.
Yeah, Max no one wants to see that.
His wife thought it was a hilarious idea, and because we were so sure he was going to win. Sorry, Andrew. We're not doing that. All right. King of the Pits in the pits?
Yeah, let's do it. Pirate King of the Pits music.
Oh, that's right. We have music for this, don't we? I should have got
Yeah, we do. Yeah,
here it is right here.
Never mind.
I got it. I'm so excited. I can't remember we have music for stuff.
You're the king of the pits.
Yeah. I think you went first last time, so I'll go King of the Pits first. This is the easiest King of the Pits in the history of the known world and the history of the dirty side of the track. It's Lando Norris. Slam dunk. Amazing.
Yeah, 100%.
All right.
Don't bother even countering that one.
Let's talk about the pits then.
You're the pits.
I appreciate you moving the phone back and forth to make me throw up with the music. So here, this is an interesting one, right? Because you mentioned at the end of the race, and I agree, all the drivers congratulating Lando. We had a really kind of nice weekend of a lot of kumbaya, a lot of incidents, but everyone kind of shook hands and made up afterwards, even after the sprint when Kevin Magnussen got 3 penalties. And anyone knew, we know his name's Magnussen. It's an inside joke from Canada. Anyway, so 3 penalties and had to go to the detention office twice. And Lewis still said he thought it was cool that Kevin said he was really racing him hard, but it was, they tried to be fair and they didn't come together. It's Magnussen. It has to be. He brought the craziness of the sprint into the actual race itself. And as much as I want to say it wasn't dirty because he didn't run right into someone on purpose, he did. He took out Sargent, and that was on him. And so to me, the Haas car is fast. Use it to race, to win, to have speed. Don't, in my mind, Kevin Magnussen was out there playing NASCAR when everyone else was playing F1. And it just didn't work for me. I didn't have a problem with it because it wasn't dangerous dirty. But why would you do that the whole race? You ended up hurting yourself more than anyone else. I don't know. I just didn't get it. So I could vote Magnussen, even though it was entertaining.
Yeah, and also the safety car he caused may have given Lando his win as well. So for that reason, I'm not sure I can give him that. I mean, he was interesting. Let's put it that way. But if we're talking the pits, oh man, I got to flip a coin between Williams and Sauber and give it for a team here. Wow. Because they're just I was thinking about Danny Rick, but then he had such a good sprint. It's difficult to, he had an awful race, but a great sprint.
And you can't knock him for that.
You can't knock him for that. So, but if you look at ones that kind of tanked across both, then it's, oh man, I don't know whether to give it to. I mean, Albon wasn't great, and he locked up and ruined his race at the end there.
That was a hell of a lockup.
It was a hell of a lockup, but then Sauber didn't really even get close to worrying about locking up because I don't think we saw Valtteri on TV all weekend, really, because it just sucks. So I've got to give it to Sauber for just turning up to Miami with a car that didn't seem to even be close to competing.
Well, Valtteri had a new race engineer out of the blue, and he didn't tell him about the sprint quali when Oscar was steaming up on the inside in the sprint quali. He almost took him out.
Yes, yeah.
And so new race engineer, I mean, that's just a mess. We rarely saw the Sauber. It was interesting at the end of the race, there were 3 neon green forklifts driving down the track at the bottom of your screen. And I go, oh, we finally saw the Sauber cars. So, no, all right. You're welcome to give it to Sauber. I wouldn't do that because, friend of the pod, Valtteri, would be mad. I just gave it to Magnussen. We have not heard from Pit Lane Paul. Apparently, our little bromance is over. He's not sending reviews in anymore.
He's out partying with Lando tonight. I'm telling you.
It's out partying with Lando. If you're able to send us one, we'll play it next week. But it's time to move on to some stats. And this was so good, we have to bust out the long-awaited, held back for a banger slap house. Such a good intro for the Miami Grand Prix SAP Stats 2024 edition. Coming into Miami, Lando Norris. Lando Norris held the unenviable record of the most podium finishes without a victory, 15, which we talked about 2 weeks ago when it happened. And he was consigned to the history books until he wins. And he's no longer tied with Patrick, and I couldn't pronounce his name 2 weeks ago, Depailler, Jean Alesi, Mika Häkkinen, and Eddie Irvine. And it was his 110th race. He's the 21st British racing winner of all time and 114th winner all time in F1. He's the first driver to take a maiden win in the U.S. since Michele Alboreto at Caesar's Palace in 82, which was the car park zigzag. And Norris finished 17th. This is my favorite stat, and this one is a Sean Kelly. The rest were mainly me. But Norris finished 17th in the 2023 Miami Grand Prix. A minute and 27 seconds behind Max. What a difference a bunch of upgrades in a year makes.
Yeah, wow.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Today was
That really is.
That is a huge difference. That's a Sean Kelly. I have to give him credit because that's a good one. Today was only McLaren's second Grand Prix win in the last 12 years. You obviously remember the last was Danny Rick at Monza, where Zach got a tattoo. He was telling anyone he'd do another tattoo for this. And the last driver to defeat Verstappen in a Grand Prix other than Carlos, which we've talked many times about the 2 times, was George Russell in Brazil in 2022. And this is I got to be honest, another Sean Kelly here. Verstappen has now finished second exactly half as many times as he's finished first. He has 58 wins in 29 seconds. So the man, if he's on the podium, he's almost always on the top step. But so it was nice to see someone put him on the second step for a change. Leclerc finished third, and as we've talked about many times, he's always finished in the top 4 of every sprint or Grand Prix this year. That is consistent. The car is good. Don't sleep on Charles. He's going to get it put together where he has a good quality and then holds people off. Carlos was P4, meaning Ferrari have scored with both cars in every sprint and Grand Prix in 24. Lewis came home 6th for Mercedes and now finished 6th in all 3 Miami Grand Prix to date. So he's got next year. Where are you going to put the Ferrari of Lewis Hamilton? 6th for the Miami Grand Prix, apparently. And then finally, thanks to Esteban Ocon's P10, which we've talked about, which was a great result, Alpine scored their first point of 2024. And interestingly, this is the longest they've ever gone into a season before scoring a point since 1985 when the team was Tolman. Oh, my God.
Wow.
So they have fallen on real hard times when you look at their history of waiting this long to score a point. Woo, that was crazy. Any of those that you enjoyed in particular?
All of them, Brian. Always enjoy SAP stats.
Great. I was just padding so we could flip over to fantasy.
Yeah, we go. I thought you were.
Let's
so
do
I played
it.
the limit. I played my limitless.
You did, and you did well. You tied for first, Robert. I don't know if you're aware. These are provisional points, so everyone who plays knows. They kind of go calculating and then they go provisional. I don't think they're final yet, but I don't think there'll be a lot of changes. We had a 10-way tie for first in the Miami Grand Prix. So
are they all limitless?
All limitless. What's the Racing Point by John? The F1 Team Forte by Manassi. We have Verstappen by Fakri. And then, Nebula Nova F1, Siddharth. And then George's Sweaty Visor, Rob. That's you, Robert. Also tied with F1 Fantasy Hub, Rob, who knows his stuff. It's Like This by Michael. Always a great participant in these things. RB Past, Present, and Future by Craig, who has been on 100 Seconds of DRS. F1 Fantasy HQ Adam, who also, him and Rob both told us all to do the Limitless. Signs, Sealed, Delivered by Ryan. I like that name a lot, Ryan. That's really good. Real Karuna by Aryadev, and then that's it. Oh, no, sorry. Real Karuna, you're 11th. I apologize. 306. I went one too far. I was so excited.
So what was the total then for that?
10 people at 321 points each.
21, 3, 2, 1. So the limitless chip then I guess all 10 of us played was double Red Bull, double Ferrari, and Lando as the
Yeah,
other driver.
effectively, yes, and
Right.
doubling Max for
And
320.
doubling
I
Max,
finished
yeah.
23rd with 218 points by not doubling. And the good news is, all you with your limitlesses, unless you had a McLaren before, don't have them because it rolls back to your team from last week. I paid for Lando, and so now I get Lando going forward. And so, I've saved my powder for later in the season for another sprint, and I have Lando Norris because
You saved your powder for later in the season when all the upgrades come and it's much more difficult to predict which teams will be good. Whereas unlike this week, this week where it was a gimme that it was blatantly going to be Red Bull, Ferrari, and McLaren. So I think you screwed the pooch there, Mr. Sapp.
Well, we'll find out. The top 5 in the league as of now: Sen Gaucho F1 by Manuel, Kimi Häkkinen by Niku, F1 Fantasy HQ Adam, It's Like This, Michael, and Tails I Win Andy. So, really great job by everybody in F1
So how much
Fantasy.
did I beat you? How much did I beat you by this week?
A lot, but you're still not ahead of me in the league.
No, that's what I mean. I was just over 100 points behind you. So how
yeah,
close
as
am I
of
in the
right
league?
now, again, these are provisional. It's very close. I have 1,280 points. I'm 22nd in the league. You are 24th with 1,258, 22 points behind.
Yeah,
so if you want to
baby.
use more of your chips just to try to catch me before I unleash the... it's like I said over when we were texting. If you've ever watched Fast and the Furious, you don't use your NOS too early. Use your NOS later. And when the Buster uses his NOS early, you know it. So yeah, if anyone understands Fast and the Furious, they love that reference. And for anyone who's never watched it, you have no idea what I'm talking about.
All I know is I'm catching you up, and you picked the wrong weekend to not use your limitless. And when you use your limitless, you'll get no points, and it'll be great. Yeah, come on.
Probably the luck I have. Rob, tell us your last thoughts on the weekend before I close this out.
Just nothing. I'm still giddy over the whole Lando thing. It was just absolutely brilliant. It was. I just can't remember. I can't remember the last time I cheered that much when somebody crossed the line. Like, I know I'm a Ferrari fan, so I should have been cheering when Sainz won it, but there was just something different about today. It was just a long time coming for him, and I'm just so happy Lando's gone and landed it. In fact, I think, and actually anybody listening to this will probably have already seen the album, the artwork for the episode, but I think I'm going to call it Lando Hope and Glory, because I think it's you looking at me like you don't know that. You know, the British slogan is Land of Hope and Glory, so I'm going to call it Lando Hope and Glory because he brought it home for Britain, and I couldn't be happier for him.
But he did it in America, so there's no Lando of the Free?
No.
Lando of the Brave?
No.
Could I interest you in Lando of the Free and the Brave?
No. If he wins it in Austin, we'll keep those in your pocket.
I'll make up a new
use
one for
those.
them that's better than that when I wasn't put on the spot. Everybody, thanks so much for listening. Seriously, I really hope, and Rob does too, that y'all had the best weekend watching F1 because I don't think it gets much better than this. I cannot wait for Imola. It's in 2 weeks' time. We'll be back in a week's time to preview Imola and do other things. We hope you all have a wonderful week. Be well, be safe, have fun, do your thing, and we'll be back on the dirty side in a week.